Welcome, welcome. I'm Zain Dhanani. I'm your host of the Cutup. We've got Steve with me as well today. What's going on, Steve?
What's up, man? I am super. I wish I could say excited to dive into today's topic, but I'm excited. I'm excited to talk about it. I'm not excited about the prospects of where it leads for me as a Detroit Lions fan watcher.
Yeah, it was an interesting Thanksgiving day because, last week we had your team, the Detroit Lions, playing, and obviously they did not win their game. They also
No,
had
they
some
did
major
not.
injuries that happened. And then we had the Cowboys game, which we covered, which is my team. And I feel like we just nailed a lot of things from last week where we were talking about George Pickens, the slant, CeeDee Lamb doing slants. And we just saw slants on slants last game, basically.
Yep, and we kind
um,
of talked about them just bank on the overs. Like they're probably like all their receivers are probably going to go over, and Pickens, Lamb, Ferguson hit his. I think we talked 35 and a half was the line on the when we talked on Thursday or Wednesday last week, and he hit 36 yards. So if you got it at the time when we were talking about it, you nailed it. But I think it moved after, so it might have gone under if you did it day of.
yeah, yeah. So we had a lot of good calls last week, and it's great because now we've got the Dallas Cowboys playing the Detroit Lions. And again, we talk about this content. It's not just about the individual matchup; it's about rest of season outlooks and stuff too. But it's hard to ignore the elephant in the room. This is the most important game of the season, I think, at least for both teams. I think I was playing with the playoff scenarios, and whoever wins, their playoff odds goes up by at least 20% if they win this game. So it's hard not to talk about the matchup itself with the Cowboys and the Lions. So we will cover that. But we also want to make sure we go deep in the weeds on what's going on with the Lions, how their offense is looking. Is it any different from last year with Ben Johnson? The weaponry is a little bit different as well when we talk about a big injury with Sam Laporta. Amon-Ra maybe not playing this game. So we've got a lot of different topics to dive into. Excited to get into it. Before we take a break, I just want to say make sure you're following Steve on Twitter at callmesteve07 and myself at Dhanani Zain. We're talking about this type of content all the time, specific to the teams that we're covering, but also just a variety of teams. Steve's one of the guys that's just putting out clips of separation, and I'm the guy that's putting out a bunch of analytics. So that's kind of our MO. But we're gonna take a quick break, and we'll be back here in a couple minutes and dive deep into the Lions offense. All right, Steve, we're back. Man, I'm excited about this matchup. I think it could be really fun game. The line for it is -3 for the Lions, so that's interesting. But the big storylines for the Lions right now, Dan Cable took over play calling, I think, in week 10. We've got a couple players that have kind of stood out a little bit more than they had previously with Jameson Williams and Jahmyr Gibbs. Obviously, we've got Amon-Ra as questionable, probably not playing based off of the Vegas lines for Jameson Williams. We saw Jameson Williams, become more of a focal point in the offense as soon as Amon-Ra went down last game. What's going on with JMO this season?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that we saw or heard about the issue, or not, I guess not issue, but Dan Cable taking over play calling. That happened around like week 8, and you started to see an uptick in Jameson Williams' usage. One of the big things that was going on prior was that he was being used as kind of a clear out guy a lot in the early weeks with Morton, and that would be fine, but if they had the protection that they had last year. I think they originally, like, if you go back to the offseason, a lot of what Morton and even the receivers kind of talked about was this wanting to isolate one-on-one matchups, focus on that, and have that be kind of how the pass game works. And I think that the idea initially was having JMO be a big-time deep threat. And that just didn't materialize because Goff has not had a ton of time to throw the ball. He hasn't looked as comfortable in the pocket this year. And Goff, in general, is not the guy that's really gonna push it deep a ton. He loves working at intermediate. He loves working at short, and that was where JMO kind of fell off. You didn't really see much of him the first 6-7 weeks, Dan Cable takes over play calling, and what a big thing of what you started to see was dagger concepts. It is a
Walk us through the dagger concept too, because some listeners they're watching today and everything. Dagger concept, good for us. We know what it is. What is it, Steve?
Yeah, so a dagger concept, basically, it's a 2-route combo. You can get to it a bunch of different ways. The Lions get to it a bunch of different ways. We'll show it a couple ways. I'll show a couple different formational and how they get to it. But basically, what you're looking for is you're looking for a guy running a deep in with a clear out seam route inside of it. That's the base. That's the basis of a dagger. You can have a bunch of other. You can have under routes, drag routes. You can have a backside hitch route, different things. But the main concept of a dagger is your seam route generally is a clear out with the post coming back behind it, and it generally opens up middle of the field for him. So, and it's been a big play for the Lions in general and for Jared Goff both last year and this year. I think I had put it out last week going into this game. I think Jared Goff was like 16 for 21 for over 250 yards on deep in routes, which you can't say they're all 100% coming from dagger, but a lot of them are. And so that's a big thing they like to do with JMO. So here you have trips on the top. You've got JMO, outside receiver. Lions love to do these condensed looks here. And what they do is you get Tom Kennedy running kind of a seam post, seam route. Then you have JMO coming in behind. Kennedy's keeping the safety deep. This was just a straight drop back. The Lions do like to get into this from play action a lot because it influences the linebackers. But with this, what they're doing, they go 5 wide. You get the 2 sit routes underneath to pull the second level defenders. So you get your linebackers and then your nickel backs to pull up on these hitch routes underneath. Everybody knows Goff loves to throw short of the sticks. It is the bane of a lot of people's existence. It works out sometimes. It doesn't always work out. But defenses know it. They know that.
You sound like a Lions fan.
Yeah, it's like I know. It's like I've watched a couple times. But like I said, you get this dig route in behind it. Boom. On this one, JMO catches it. He's great after the catch. And that's really the biggest thing of what the Lions have incorporated with JMO. He's gotten more some of the like solo hitch routes, things like that. But the biggest thing is the incorporation of this dagger concept to JMO. Now,
and are you saying that that's more of a Dan Campbell thing rather than what Morton was doing before?
I think so, because it was a big part of the Ben Johnson offense too. And it also, if I remember correctly, when Dan Campbell took over play calling after they had let go of Anthony Lynn when Campbell came in his first year, they started kind of working that a little bit more too. Obviously, much different personnel back then, but it's kind of the basis of it's their go-to intermediate / deep, whatever, like 15 to 20 yards. That's really their bread and butter. And so
just the timing of that call, I'm just thinking about it as well, like against cover 3, which is what the Packers were running.
Yep.
I mean, having that seam route go up the middle, it's just going to take the safety. If you had, like, let's say for people that don't understand it that well, like if you had that deep route going on the outside from the outside receiver, and then the other guy was running an in, like the safety would just cut the in off, and the corner would drop back with the deep route. So having the slot receiver run deep takes that middle safety. The cornerback is staying with Jameson Williams, but then he starts cutting inside. Usually that's where the linebackers would be. They're running a couple of concepts short of the sticks. The linebackers have to pay attention to those guys, don't get enough depth, and then you've got space for JMO to operate behind him. And that's kind of why you're talking about the play action as well. If you had play action in that situation, the linebackers would be working even closer to the line of scrimmage, making more space for Jameson Williams. And it's funny because we looked at a similar concept last week when we were looking at the Cowboys with CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens. So
yeah, it is. It's when you have a guy like a George Pickens, like a Jameson Williams, guys who are really good at getting separation across the middle of the field. Jameson Williams, I think, when you give these guys a two-way go, especially when you have them condensed, a little bit more condensed splits inside the numbers, you really threaten both inside, outside, and that's where that's where Jameson Williams thrives, is being able to have his defender in disadvantage situation. He's really improved his route running from like year over year. Beginning like, when he came in as a rookie, one of his big things was that he was really slow. He was kind of slow to get into breaks. He didn't. It was a lot of steps. It was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 to get in and out of a break. Now he's able to get in and out in like 1 or 2 steps more consistently, and it has boosted his separation. He jumped off the page last year, and he looks pretty consistently about the same this year. But yeah, like it's
even
just
the first year stuff too is kind of interesting because it's coming off of a major injury. And I mean, just speaking from my own experience, like you're kind of sometimes overcompensating with extra steps so that you're not putting as much pressure on that leg or whatever it is.
That, and then coming in from college, no pro experience, a lot bigger of an offense to absorb, in the sense that in college, listen, Jameson Williams, he's a speedster. And those guys in college, especially when you have a quarterback that can air it deep, it kind of can come down to like, it doesn't matter what my route technique looks like or anything. I can just get past this guy and he'll put it up for me and it will make a play. That kind of goes away a little bit in the NFL. He still has that speed that can it can jump on you, but you're just not going to have the consistent output from a guy like that. And we've seen so many guys over the years fail because of that exact reason of not being able to translate route running to the NFL, relying too much on speed. Generally, I think a big issue is that guys will only work at one speed, and because I think speed gets you to the NFL, and then change of speed is what keeps you in the NFL as a receiver. If you're able to mix up your speed changes, it messes with the quarterbacks. They're not able to time them up. If you just run full speed 10 times out of 10, it doesn't put defenders in as much of a pickle as you think it would. But here we go. Another one is, I believe this was another dig route from JMO, but they actually get to it. This is just a deep cross route. So this is another one. Basically, the whole of what the Lions want to do with Jameson Williams is they want to get him working over the middle of the field. It's where he thrives. It's the speed. It's everything. And so, again, I misspoke, and I thought I had another Dagger concept loaded in, but I don't. But this is just a JMO deep cross where you have the linebackers kind of walked up towards the line of the scrimmage. They're in a single high look. The middle of the field is pretty open here. You're going to have you have the 2 guys at the bottom of the screen covering the 2 receivers. You have a safety over the top. Safety's leaning towards these 2 because of Tesla and JMO. That speed, the safety is going to shade that way a little bit. So that's what
they're not scared of Tommy Kennedy on the backside.
No, they're not too scared of Tommy Kennedy. And I don't even know who's on the field there, unfortunately. It might be Ross Dwelly. They're not really concerning you with speed. That's not the concern. But it works out because you get a blitz, which opens up the middle of the field. JMO already has inside leverage on the corner, and so it's a layup throw. You get him working across the middle of the field, and that has been the biggest change since Dan Campbell has come to play calling, is that he has emphasized getting Jameson Williams targets over the middle of the field, working him on crossers, working him on dig routes. And that was what Ben Johnson was so good at last year, and why Jameson went over 1,000 yards last year, is that they consistently mixed in these crossing routes, these dig routes that got him working over the middle, that put the defenses in conflict and let him use his speed to his advantage. And so, again, same type of thing. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say we're looking at a bunch of clips that are against the Packers, and obviously Amon-Ra was out for this game for most of the game. So one of my questions is, did they call different plays then for Jameson Williams that are you're saying that they like the crossing routes, they like the dig routes that he runs on the Dagger concepts, but did they fundamentally change their play calls because they knew that they needed to run through Jameson Williams?
I don't think they necessarily change their play calls, because as much as Amon-Ra does get involved in the intermediate a decent amount. They do like to work him on those dagger concepts on some of those crossing routes. Where Amon-Ra really thrives is that underneath and short area, make a linebacker miss, make a nickel backer or nickel corner miss in open field to get a couple yards of space, and then use them as a yak opportunity, because that's really the bulk of what the Lions offense has been for, I mean, the last 2 or 3 years has been
Since the second
creating.
half of his rookie year.
Yeah, it's been creating yak opportunities for these guys. They realize that if they get their guys into space and just let them work with the ball, you're getting the ball out quicker, less time for Jared Goff to get under pressure. You're stressing defenses because the ball does get out so quick, you don't necessarily know where it's going to go. And Amon-Ra creates good separation in the short field. All of that combined is what kind of makes it's what keeps the offense on task. So it's not necessarily that the play calling changed, it's that you lose that layup option, that reliable first read where Goff kind of knows, hey, 60% of the time he's gonna 60% of the time every time he's gonna get open kind of thing. And it's just it's a safety blanket. It's just like one of the best safety blankets in the NFL. And so being able to have that being taken away, it doesn't necessarily change the play calling. It's just that now you're subbing in Kennedy, and he's not going to provide as much juice underneath as an Amon-Ra. So like the ceiling for those short routes, the ceiling for those 6-yard hitch routes, 6-yard out routes gets lowered quite a bit.
Yeah, I guess the big thing that I was trying to get at is, Jameson Williams last game, his first read rate went through the roof. I think it was like in the 40% range, which is monstrous if anybody doesn't know.
Yeah.
That's like uber elite.
That's about what JSN operates at this year.
This year, JSN, a good JSN season, in historic JSN season. So my question there is like, so they're running similar plays. It's just that they've changed who they're trying to get the ball to in that same play. It was Amon-Ra St. Brown. This game, it just ended up being Jameson Williams because he's pretty much the only reliable separator on the team that's still available.
Yeah, and Green Bay has been notoriously sticky in coverage. Keyshawn Nixon's been really good. Carrington Valentine's been really good. They've had been one of the better cover units in the NFL, and Jameson kind of jumps out as a guy that can win against that secondary. That might change a little bit against the Cowboys. The Cowboys have been a little bit more porous and not as sticky in coverage. So
especially over the middle of the field, when you're talking about like attacking right behind the linebackers, that is exactly where the Cowboys struggle.
Right. Yeah. And so it's a bulk of the, it really is, they want to put the linebackers in conflict a lot. And so again, you have another dagger concept on a trips. And this actually, I think, is a good play too, because it kind of encapsulates a little bit of what the Lions have done. Is one, they're getting into this pony personnel a little bit more the last 2 weeks, which is getting both of your running back. Pony is when you get both of you, like if you have a 1A, 1B running back by committee, it's when you're trying to get both running backs on the field in the same formation. You generally call that pony. So what the Lions have done the last couple of weeks is they are starting to bring in Gibbs and put him at slot receiver a little bit more, bringing David Montgomery in. I think a big part of that is that you still get the ability to put Jahmyr Gibbs into a route while also getting the pass protection that David Montgomery offers. So that's it. Because sorry, go ahead.
I'm going to ask you about Gibbs more, especially this situation, a little bit later. I don't want to go too deep into that, but I mean, we're going to talk about this pony concept and Gibbs running his routes. But it's interesting that you brought that up, and then even within this situation, this dagger concept, it actually looks a little bit different because they're doing it with trips. I think last time it was like a twin setup, and so now you've got another guy on one side that's kind of they've got four defenders to this side right now. They're shading the single high safety onto the side where the trips is. Not too uncommon, but it's still one of those things that I think is kind of underrated. The fact that they don't have Amon-Ra St. Brown, and they're able to say, hey, we're going to put another guy on this side of the field. So we've got 4-on-3 essentially. And if you're not doing any sort of like play action fake or what have you, you really do need to set up the concept well so that you can create that space. And obviously in this play, they did.
And this is where it actually, so the last dagger we had talked about, it was from empty, and they did come from a trips. And that's actually what the Lions do like to incorporate. They like to get to it from trips because, and you'll see with Jahmyr Gibbs here, is that you get the threat of Jahmyr Gibbs underneath. You have to respect that. You obviously have to follow the seam deep, and then that, and they actually drop into what looks like a cover 6 almost. I could be wrong on that, but again, this one is actually covered really, really well.
Yeah, it was like cover 6 to me too. Backside corner is probably playing his deep half.
Yeah, and Goff ends up taking off, and this is what the Packers have been really good at actually this year, is defending Dagger. They've been they stifled, I forget who they played in week 12, but they stifled their opponent in week 12 on this, and then they started to get kind of wise to it later in the game against Lions, where
the Giants. Yeah, the Giants.
And this is where now, compared to the prior one that we showed, which was earlier in the game, this is now coming, I believe this was a third or fourth quarter here now. Now, if you see without play action, having to go straight drop, you lose that pull of the linebackers because now they're not, you're not going to want to respect the underneath as much because you've been burned on this before. This linebacker followed Kennedy deep well and then transfers off into it, stops him, and then it forces Goff to move off his spot. And in the one time that Goff doesn't get pressured and is able to escape the pocket, he makes something happen. But that has kind of been an issue for the Lions as a whole, is straight drop back stuff. Is that it hasn't been as productive as it was in prior years. And it's caused quite a bit of like lack, and it's just lacking in the offense of going straight drop back has not been as efficient as it was in prior years.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought process, and I'm curious, like, your perspective, like, why would that change year over year? In this game, I can understand you're missing some of your critical personnel. No Laporta, no Amon-Ra. There's just less out there to generate separation or sit in holes or whatever. But why would it be less effective this year?
The big thing is the pressure on no play action, straight dropbacks in 2024. Jared Goff was 5th in the NFL at 7.7 yards per attempt, which is good. I mean, think about it. Most teams run play action, I don't know, to a max 25, 30% of the time. So you're looking at 75% of your dropbacks are coming with no play action. And last year being top 5 in the league, 7.7 yards per attempt. And he's only facing pressure on 27.6% of his dropbacks. That's huge. I mean, that's one of the lowest rates in the NFL. Last year, it was 8th or 9th in the NFL last year. And then you come to this year, you get a lot of turnover on that interior offensive line. You lose Frank Ragnow at center, which has shown to be a much bigger issue. Glasgow slides to center, that replaced one of the guards. You lose Mahogany. Now you've got kind of a rotating cast at the other guard. You've got Ratledge in as a rookie left guard. And all of a sudden, all of that movement on the interior has really made them susceptible to interior pressure. And as we know with Brady in years past, pocket passers, interior pressure is like the bane of their existence. If you get interior pressure, you're gonna mess with them. And that is what has really tanked this. And like I say tank. They're 7-5. They're still a really good offense, but they're not getting it's just not as pretty as it was. Because now, like, you look at this year, his yards per attempt on straight dropbacks, it's dropped to 7.05 yards. Not that crazy of a drop off, but it's still a drop off nonetheless. and then his pressure rate has jumped to 35%. So
I
you're
think
seeing
it's interesting that you I think it's interesting that you mentioned that the interior pressure can cause issues because the matchup that they're playing this upcoming week, we've seen what the addition of Quentin Williams has done for the Cowboys and his interior pressure. I don't know, man. What do you think is going to happen in this game based off of what you've seen from the Cowboys defensive line and what they could potentially cause issues with on the Lions offensive line?
I think that it really is going to come down to, can the Lions establish their run game to keep them on task? Their offense is predicated on, it's such a cliche, but they really do establish the run, and then their pass game works off of that. It's a lot of some teams are kind of working more toward working their pass game off of or working their run game off their pass game a little bit. The Lions still stick pretty traditional in that they want to get in, pound it in the ground, work play action off of that, try and get themselves out of third and long situations, and just keep the defense in constant conflict. And so the bulk of what needs to happen is that they need to get the run game going, and Gibbs and Montgomery have to stick around their 4, 5, 6 yards of carry instead of I think what you've seen more often this year is getting stuffed for 2, 3 yards, which is a concern on the interior with Quentin Williams and Kenny Clark.
Yeah, so I was just kind of thinking about it then for this game. If we think that the interior pressure could be an issue, what does that mean for? I mean, we talked about Jameson Williams, we talked about the dig routes and all of the fun concepts that they're running with him and the crossers. What does that mean for Jameson Williams if they are getting consistent interior pressure?
I would imagine, and you've seen it a couple of times, they'll work him into the screen game a decent amount. That's like you saw it against the Eagles a little bit. On teams that they start to get pressured more, especially from the interior, is that they'll try to bait them up, start to move linemen outside, get them on the run into the screen game, whether it be halfback or to Jameson Williams, tunnel screens, swing screens, things like that. I think that's really what they'll try to do to mitigate pressure. The screen passes and play action just kind of pause everyone a little bit. Usually you're incorporating some type of play action. Usually, whether it be an RPO, whether it be a halfback screen off of play action, it usually comes with some type of run action. And so that's where I think the Lions will probably lean a little bit more into that, especially with Jameson Williams, because that, and then I think it turns into short crossing routes. They do like to get JMO on some of those short drag routes a little bit more. And I think that's where you'll start to see him incorporated more into shorter routes. I think they will put him into, let's see if he can work the short area of the field, do the 6-yard hitch routes, get a little bit of separation, make a move after the catch. I think it's not a perfect drag and drop replacement, but I do think that they feel confident in JMO just running kind of running the role of Amon-Ra in the offense, and then hopefully working Kennedy and Tisla off of that as Dallas funnels more focus to Jameson Williams and Jahmyr Gibbs. I mean, I think Jahmyr Gibbs out of the backfield is especially with the linebacker play in Dallas, it can be a little sketchy. I think that's another matchup that they'll try to exploit.
Yeah, I guess the way that I was thinking through it was, for the listeners, does Jameson Williams kind of just stay involved regardless of how the game trends? Is it they're getting a lot of interior pressure? Let's say they're getting exterior pressure. Whatever they're doing, if Goff is under duress or something's not working, these dagger concepts aren't working, is he pretty much going to be involved regardless, given the fact that we think that Amon-Ra St. Brown's probably not playing?
Yeah, I think so. Amon-Ra commands 8 to 12 targets a game. I know you can play that game of where do the targets go then, but they want to get the ball to their game breakers. Amon-Ra is a game breaker. He's out. I think JMO is the guy that fills in directly. I wonder if they'll utilize that pony package like we talked about. Like we said, doing this stuff where they're getting Gibbs into the slot. They have Montgomery, And I think that's kind of prepping him to be used a little bit more in the pass game and potentially in some of that short area stuff as well. Some of that underneath passing. Well, again, still, I think David Montgomery is a huge part of can be a huge part of the pass blocking scheme and helping mitigate pressure and being able to get him in while not losing the ability to have Gibbs on the field. I think that's where they might lean into it a little bit more and have Gibbs in the slot. We talked about it pre-show. I think what they haven't done a ton of is that they haven't really put Gibbs in motion out of the slot a ton.
Yeah.
I think that's where you'd like to see. I mean, like here you just have it's a run play, pull lead. They just have him blocking. I think as a guy who's never called plays in the NFL, I think that if you getting Gibbs into motion I think it would create more conflict for defenses. So I wonder if they start to do that a little bit more, start to get him in motion and give the Dallas Cowboys a little bit more eye candy with him to help open up the run game, open up the pass game, open things up underneath for him, whether it's, getting him on the opposite side, having a guy in motion, getting a corner backed off and getting it to him underneath and letting him work after the catch.
Yeah, there was some interesting clips on Twitter. Now I'm going away from the Lions on this, but this was kind of what we saw from the Ben Johnson offense from the Friday game, the Bears. And there was a lot of talk about the eye candy of we've got guys going in motion one way, and we've got people pulling the other way and setting up plays. And it's just, it looks like absolute chaos. And who you think is blocking you is probably not blocking you, and who you think is getting the ball is probably not getting the ball. And what you're describing with that pony package, I can easily see a situation where if you put Gibbs in motion, you could either hand him the ball or he can just keep going and do a little like run into the flat, or he can go into the flat and turn it into a wheel or whatever you really want to do with it. But it's taking eyes off of potentially Montgomery, taking eyes off of Jameson Williams. You can open up a lot more holes in the defense by just getting people in chaotic situations like that. And people are going to pay attention to Jahmyr Gibbs when he's in motion because he's got the most or second most juice on the team.
Yep. Yeah. And I think that is what you see lacking in this offense, and what I kind of touched on with how straight drop back stuff isn't as efficient in yards after the catch. That's what Ben Johnson's really good at. He's really good at dressing up plays to look differently while still being, the same type of concepts, things like that. But he's able to throw in so much eye candy that he's able to open up things. He opens things up underneath for big yak opportunities. And that was where the Lions, because of how much athleticism and speed they have across their offense, that's what helps them thrive. And I just don't know if you're seeing the marriage of the eye candy and the play concepts be as strong as it was with Ben Johnson.
Yeah. And I guess just thinking about Jahmyr Gibbs in this game, since we're starting to go into the pony package and all of that kind of stuff, like, I mean, it feels like, to me, this feels like high school football, because you're saying like, hey, I've got two guys and then I've got some like ancillary pieces that I don't really, really like. So, I mean, that's why we're spending most of our time talking about Jameson Williams and now talking about Jahmyr Gibbs. You can't really take him off the field, and you talked about the pony concept so that you can at least have him involved in a pass game situation or confuse the defense and have him in motion and maybe hand him the ball or whatever. This game is basically going to come down to, can Jameson Williams and can Jahmyr Gibbs like create big plays for the team?
Yeah.
And so what are you thinking? What are some angles that we could see the Lions attack with Jahmyr Gibbs in the run game or in the pass game? Also, just wanted to mention on Jahmyr Gibbs, ever since Dan Campbell started taking over play calling in week 10, I think Jahmyr Gibbs like leads the league or is close in targets per route run. So it's like, are they throwing him the ball more on purpose? Are they putting him in different concepts? Yeah, there's a lot going on.
What they really like to do is that they love to get the receivers vertical and just push the entire defense, linebackers, secondary. You see it quite a bit on the straight dropbacks with Goff, is they really like to get the secondary pushed back with deep vertical concepts. And then you have Gibbs swing out, swing underneath, and just get him the ball in open space. That's a big, it's not anything like special, really. Like one of his best routes that he does better than anyone else is like the Texas route, which is just an angle route out of the backfield. They like to match him up against the linebacker. That's one of the big areas they like to do. And then it really is just, let's push the defense deep and let's get Gibbs space to work with the ball and let him go. And he's just showing to be too valuable to not continue to try to force that and make that happen. But I think it also comes with that defenses are more aware of it as the season has gone on. Jahmyr Gibbs has become more of a focal point of where defenses are focused, especially in the passing game. And it's the cushion is not as big because of Goff's reticence to push it downfield as much, and not only just reticence, but just not having as much time to push the ball downfield. And so it has just kind of created a little bit of a congestion where a good defense like a Green Bay, they can have a linebacker kind of focus on that play up, and they have really fast defensive linemen who pursue really well and are able to get outside. Then that's kind of what Green Bay mitigated that. Gibbs was really barely involved in the passing game, and you saw how that kind of stunted the Lions' movement against Green Bay, is that without those layups to Gibbs to get 6, 8, 10 yards at a time off a simple halfback swing pass, once that goes away, the offense, it just becomes more difficult to push the ball down the field. And then you incorporate not having Amon-Ra. Now all of a sudden 2 of your layups are gone, and everything just starts to, the butthole starts to pucker a little bit because you're tense and you don't know what to do.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking about this from just like playing Madden. Like you said, it's such an easy concept to think about, but you send a bunch of dudes deep. The linebackers kind of go with some of the guys, the corner safeties, etc. Everybody's moving backwards. And then you just have this like 1 yard guy in the flat doing like a little swing or whatever.
Right.
The guy's wide open and he has 5 yards to run. And it's such a high positive EPA play because you're just going to get 3 or 4 or 5 yards every single time. And it sounds like that's how they've mainly used Gibbs. Not anything that special or different, but just that those opportunities, they're trying to get him something in space and doing it in the run game, but also trying to do it in the pass game. So, hey, we'll send guys deep and we'll try to check it down to him.
Exactly. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do against Dallas with the issues that Dallas has had in the secondary. I think, like, will they try to prioritize going at those linebackers, the middle of the field, working Gibbs against those linebackers? Or is Dallas able to stop that? And then where does the offense go? And that's where it really comes down to their run game. And that's a bit, again, with the two interior guys that Dallas has, that becomes a concern for the Lions. And I think one of the biggest things, and I had said you had put in a tweet from, I think it was Josh Norris had put out a tweet earlier today of EPA on different running lanes. And I looked at the Lions, and one of the big things is that if you looked at their chart, the B, C, D gap on the right side is green, positive EPA, looks good. That's you're running towards Sewell. Everything to the left looked rough. It was all red. It was lightly negative EPA, and it shows up in their yards per carry. If you look at the Lions, if you look at how both David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, their splits from running right to left are kind of crazy. Gibbs and Montgomery going to the left. Gibbs is averaging 6.38 yards per carry, and Montgomery's is averaging 5.83 yards per carry on runs to the right. If you take that to the left, which is going towards Dagger, that's going towards Ratledge, the rookie, the efficiency and the numbers plummet. Gibbs only averages 4.3 yards per carry on runs to the left. Montgomery only averages 3.7 yards per carry to the left. So that dichotomy of not being able to have the efficiency of the run game both ways has somewhat limited this offense, in that you can see kind of a focus of them trying to push the run game to the right, but you have to incorporate it back to the left. And not having those bounce plays, big plays happening on both sides it's kind of hampering the offense. And I think where it comes down to for Dallas in this game is, as much as it is the interior defensive linemen, it's the linebackers and the safeties that have to come ready to play, because that's where the Lions have gotten eaten up this year. As much as it has been good interior defensive line defense in the run game that stopped them, it's putting together good linebacker play behind good interior defensive lineman play.
And that's probably one of my biggest concerns. I'm a Cowboys fan, but just thinking about the ways that the Cowboys have gotten beat in the run game have mainly been on the exterior. So talking about like the C and D gaps, like everything on the outside is where they kind of struggle, where you get your linebackers having to go play in the alley, or linebackers and safeties play in the alley. I mean, this is just me being a little bit sad about where our linebacker play has been this season. I know we've got DeMarvion Overshown back and Logan Wilson in the trade, but Kenneth Murray's still playing a lot, who's still out there sometimes. And those guys have played really, really poorly in filling those gaps, and especially Kenneth Murray. And then you also see even Logan Wilson. I think his head is in the right place. He knows where to go, but he's clearly lost maybe like 2 steps. He's very slow.
Yeah.
So this is the one angle that I think that the Lions have a pretty strong advantage in, is what they're able to do to the linebacker play of the Dallas Cowboys in the run game with the outside runs, and then the over the middle of the field play action, or just attacking the middle of the field with the pass game. So I'm curious, like, what are we going to see from Gibbs? How are they going to do this?
One of the big things is that they love to run outside zone. They've been really zone heavy this year, a little bit more than when Ben Johnson was there. Montgomery is up towards 80% zone runs, and Gibbs is right around 70. Actually, let me take that off because I had a filter set on. All of our data comes from Fantasy Points Data Suite, by the way. Go subscribe. It has all of the data that we talk about, and it helps me in my research for bettings. I'm sure it helps Zain. It helps our entire company. So like, take advantage of it. I'm pretty sure it's a little bit cheaper right now. Anyway, now that I have the filters off, Gibbs is right around 56% zone concept. Montgomery's around 63% zone concept. And what they like to do, especially with Gibbs, and this is where Gibbs is a monster. This is actually a run to the left that works out. And this is really what the big threat of what Gibbs is that even when he doesn't hit the hole, which, like, if you watch it develop, he actually has an alleyway that opens up here. Once I get it going, he actually has where he has the alleyway straight up the middle here. He ends up bouncing it, and where he's dangerous is that he gets around the edge so fast. He breaks tackles, and he's just good on the run. And that's where, when he's not getting contacted at or before the line of scrimmage, he's so dangerous. Once he's able to make his choice, he's able to get out and go. And that is how the Lions win the run game, is just being able to get Gibbs contact free. It's where he's excelled. He's been, like, last year he was at the top of the league in yards before contact per attempt. This year he's up there again, but it's on those runs where he does get contacted before the line of scrimmage that you start to see the issues crop up. And so, and this is what I'm talking about.
Well, they're just shooting the gaps with the linebackers here too. It's like, as soon as the ball is snapped, you see 50.
And this is a third,
the B gap.
Yeah, and this is a third and short, but you can see You've got a double team on Parsons. You've got a double team on 96 here. They're both able to occupy those blockers, and it does leave a free lane for this linebacker to come up, and any running back is going to be bad if he's getting contacted at the line of scrimmage. It doesn't matter who they are. It could be Jim Brown. If they're getting hit at the line of scrimmage, it's generally not going to go bad. And that's where in years past, the Lions were so good at getting up and off these double teams and up to the second level. And this interior offensive line just is not doing that as efficiently. And so on these short runs like this, I believe this was one of their 3rd and 1 rushes that ended up getting stuffed. You get situations where linebackers can key in, get upfield or get downfield and go make a play. And then sorry, go ahead.
Just thinking about it, like you mentioned the situation, 3rd and 1. The linebackers clearly seem to have committed to the run regardless. Like it was upon snap that 58 is just going directly through the hole.
Yeah.
Is that also potentially a play calling issue? Or
it probably is that they were in heavy personnel. It was 3rd and 1, and there has not been a ton of creativity, at least from years past, on the 3rd and 1, 4th and short. I think it's been a huge topic of discussion as they failed a bunch of 4th down attempts. And I think it just comes with that you're not getting that interior push. One of the big things I think that so many people really enjoyed about the Lions in prior years is that it would be 4th and 5, 3rd and 8, and they would be able to lean on a run because they had such good push interior, because they had such good tackles outside that they were able to rely on getting into a pass situation and knowing that they can run the ball on teams like that. And that just throws a defense into so much conflict that you have to think about. That's now kind of gone away. You don't get that as much with the Lions this year. And so I think it puts them into situations where teams are able to key in more run or pass on 3rd and 4th down, especially 3rd and 4th and short, because the Lions they believe in what they do. And so they're going to trust that they can run the ball up the middle. And it just hasn't worked out this year. And that's been like a huge thing. And again, what Green Bay did so well is freeing up linebackers. And then they also had a ton of support from Evan Williams. Evan Williams played one of the best run defense from a safety in this game that I have seen in a while. And you can see like the Lions actually block it pretty well. And this is where Gibbs is dangerous. You have a whole backside. This block out here is a little suspect. It's still held up, but Evan Williams screams downhill. He's 10 yards off the ball at the snap, and he fills in that extra gap where no one else is, and he makes a play. If Evan Williams doesn't,
that's a hell of a play from a safety. Playing 10 yards down, and you're basically getting the tackle at the line of scrimmage. That's insane.
He played like a man on the mission. It was insane what he did on Sunday, and he truly was what broke this Lions run game. Is that usually that hole's open. Usually this wide receiver gets to this safety and you have a one-on-one with the corner, or, the linebacker or the wide receiver gets up to the corner and he has a one-on-one with the safety of the second level. But what good defenses have done against the Lions is that the offensive linemen aren't, like, you can kind of see it. They're not getting up to the second level as well as they had in years prior. And you do need you need good blocking from your receivers, but
I'm seeing 0 guys block linebackers on that.
Yeah, they get caught up in the wash. 57 misses the double off of it, and the linebacker is able to get around, and he ends up filling the hole too. It's just that interior offensive line keeps cropping up as such a big issue for just the bulk of the offense and what they do well. And you see it with Gibbs, and then you see it even more so with Montgomery. I think you see it where Montgomery doesn't have the speed that Gibbs has, the downhill speed that Gibbs has. And so same type of thing. you get a good push, but then you have three guys across. I mean, again, I think the Packers, their run defense was so good in this game with their secondary, but now all of a sudden you have 2-3 guys at the second level that are there to shore up Montgomery, and that you gang tackle. Once you can gang tackle him, he's done. Like you don't want Montgomery one-on-one in a hole, but if you can get two guys in there, you can make something happen. And so it's
Yeah.
really, that's where it is. It's probably the biggest matchup of the game is if Quinnen Williams and Kenny Clark can keep their linebackers clean and the linebackers play well, they can stop the run. And then subsequently it takes lines out of play action, getting into advantageous downs. Goff, the one thing that he will always do is he will always crush play action, especially in this Lions offense. But if you can stifle that run game, if you can get them behind the sticks, and you saw it a decent amount against the Packers, you saw it a decent amount against the Eagles. Once they get behind the sticks, it forces Goff into straight drops. It allows the defense to get into more of a trusted pass rush situation. And Goff isn't as comfortable behind this offensive line as he was in years prior when he has to go straight drop back. That has kind of been the story of the season for the Lions.
Yeah. I guess the thing that I keep thinking about with the matchup in itself against the Cowboys is exactly what you were kind of getting at, is just that interior pressure. If they are able to generate no room to run through the interior, you're basically just hoping that that you can have some exterior plays with Gibbs that just go off and like he just takes one to the house or something like that. And I'm just thinking about like what you've presented in terms of what happened against the Packers, and part of me wonders if the fact that Amon-Ra was missing basically just allows them to have shade a safety over the top of Jameson Williams, which I think we saw a couple times with the cover 6.
Yep.
And then the linebackers and other safety can be super aggressive in playing the run game, because that's the only other thing they need to worry about is Gibbs or Montgomery. And then Jameson Williams is basically taken care of by two guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's kind of what I worry about. And I don't know that the Cowboys are smart enough schematically to do something similar, but I know that they have the talent when it comes to the defensive line to potentially like generate some havoc. So to me, it's more just a matter of, do you believe in the linebacking play, the safeties? And to me, that answer is undefined. Like, I think that it's up and down. Some games, yes. Some games, no. It depends on the personnel and who's playing. And if it's Kenneth Murray, you're probably getting screwed. And if it's Logan Wilson out there, if Jahmyr Gibbs is able to get to the edge, then, yeah, also screwed.
Yeah, and if you look at it, since Quinnen Williams has gotten into the building, the Cowboys' run defense has been good. Now, has it been who they've played? Has it been the actual improve? Like, I think as a whole, they've improved this season against the run comparative to what they were last year. I think they were horrendous last year. This year, they've been a little bit better. But since Quinnen Williams has come back, they've only given up 38 rushing yards a game. They are giving up about 4.5 yards per carry, but they've only given up 114 rush yards in the last 3 weeks total. And so I caution myself against saying whether I think that it's a genuine, like, total improvement for the Cowboys defense, or did they just play the Raiders and then the Chiefs, and the Raiders, Chiefs, and Eagles, who the Raiders obviously have their issues on their offensive line.
They barely ran the ball.
Right.
Yeah, they didn't even want to try to run the ball.
Right. And then the Chiefs, run game at this point feels like it's a formality for them, that they have to do it, but they don't. Yeah. They're not expecting a lot out of it, but it's like, it's part of the game, so we got to do it. And then the Eagles have kind of struggled in the same way that the Lions have with offensive line turnover. You've seen that rush offense take a dip. I think that theirs comes from offensive structure as well, but it is something to be concerned about, of like, hey, the Cowboys were able to cause some issues for that run offense, and the Lions are kind of facing somewhat similar to a lesser degree issues as what the Eagles are facing, and that it becomes such a critical matchup in this game. And it's critical for the rest of the season. I mean, especially now that the Lions got the devastatingly confusing news about Ragnow not being able to come back, which was the worst whiplash of 3 days that you had as a Lions fan, where it was the euphoria.
He basically came in there and came in there stretched, and then his hamstring tore off the bone, and then he's out.
Yeah, and you had the euphoria of like, holy crap, Frank Ragnow's coming back. Just got to get through the Packers, and then they're good. Frank Ragnow coming back, you lose to the Packers. Well, at least they're getting Frank back. Psych, you're not getting Frank back. Season's over, or at least that's the mentality, I think, for some Lions fans. But all that to say, no help is coming to their interior offensive line. And so I think that molds the rest of their season, is what happens with that interior offensive line. They've got brutal games down the stretch. They have tough matchups, especially on the defensive line down the stretch. And it'll be interesting to see if they can mitigate interior pressure. It'll be interesting to see if they can start to get offensive linemen moving up to linebackers. Again, I think the Lions have started to incorporate a little bit more of a fullback, I think, to help get that guy up to the second level to help create alleys. It worked against the Giants. You saw what Gibbs did. Didn't work as well against the Packers, but it's just, those are little things that they're starting to incorporate more to help mitigate what has been a lackluster performance from the interior offensive line.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking about it from a fantasy angle. Like, we've seen some better performances from Jameson Williams. I think that's the nature of what you've talked about with like the crossers, dagger, or the dagger concept with the crossers, with the in routes or the digs, and then the crossing routes as well. Sorry, got stumbled. So we know that there's a little bit of usage change, which is kind of leading to better performances. It also matches kind of where Goff is not bad at that part of the field. He's worse at driving the ball down the field. So it puts him in situations where he's more likely to get the ball. And then Gibbs, with his target share going up and basically just usage feeling like it's going up in general. There's been articles on the website for Fantasy Points like Gibbs is a top 3 pick if we started picking today, just like he kind of was last year. Maybe he was top 5 this past year.
Yeah.
I mean, if I had to choose which running backs I'd want, I think he would be second behind CMC. I think he's better than CMC at this point in his career. But CMC is just getting the ball like literally every play.
Yeah, straight volume. Which I had said coming into the season that if I had gotten the number 1 pick in any of my fantasy drafts, it was always going to be like Gibbs was going to be the number 1 pick for me. I think that I think this is actually I think this is actually a decent question because they kind of represent each other a little bit in that people believe that Gibbs is also a good like receiving back. Mm-hmm. But I think there's a different level of receiving when it comes to CMC. And I'm very curious to actually get your opinion on whether Gibbs is capable of being a CMC level receiver, meaning that he can actually line up at receiver. You talked about Pony. Is that something where he can actually win on routes that are true receiving routes as opposed to just like leaking out of the backfield and hitting Texas routes and stuff like that? And I think that that's the $1 million question because you haven't seen a ton of him lining up in the slot, because what CMC does well is he's a good route runner alongside being a good receiver. And so he is able to create separation against like nickel corner and things like that. That's something that you'll want to see Gibbs do. I personally think that will come. I think that he has the feet, he has the quickness, he has the know-how to expand that into his game. I don't know that the Lions will ever go full what the 49ers have gone with Christian McCaffrey's usage, because I think they realized the longevity of what they could have with Gibbs. Whereas with McCaffrey, I think that the 49ers are like, we don't know when I don't know the next time we're going to lose him. So we're going to run him into the ground because that's what he wants and that's what we want. Whereas I think with the Lions, he's in year 2 or 3. What is Gibbs? Is Gibbs a third year, second year?
This is
I
his third
forget
year.
already. Yeah, so like you're in
Yeah.
year 3, and you're probably looking at a second contract for him. I think it's more of trying to not put as many miles onto his legs as far as carrying the ball, hits piling up. So I think he has the ability to run out of the slot at a above average level, but I just don't know if you'll ever see it the way that you see it with CMC.
Yeah. So yeah, just to wrap up on Gibbs, I mean, clearly a top 3 running back, probably rest of the season. This team needs something, especially in this game. I think if you're doing like DFS or whatever, I think if you feel like the Lions are going to score a ton of points, Gibbs is going to be your captain in a showdown lineup pretty clearly, because I think that the passing game, it's not going to struggle. I just don't think that it's going to be a game where you're going to see Jared Goff throw for like 300 plus yards because of the weaponry that's out there. It's going to be have to be a game where they set up the run game. Gibbs is going off, and then there's play action that can set up where they're not dropping back like 40 times. They're dropping back 30 to 35 times and hitting some of those crossers that like you were talking about. And it just sets up for like 250 yards instead of like 300 plus.
Yeah, because if they can get into play action, that's when the offense really gets going. I mean, Jared Goff in play action this year is 75% completion percentage. He's averaging 9.95 yards per attempt. He has a 129.6 passer rating. All of that on just a 6.3 A dot. It doesn't really matter if they like Goff is once they get the play action going, it caught because of Gibbs, because of Montgomery, it causes so much stress. It pulls the defense up so much, and it opens up that middle of the field where Jared Goff likes to operate. If Dallas can stop the run and keep Gibbs contained, pull that play, make that play action a little bit less effective, make him a little bit more reticent to get into play action as often as they want to, and force Goff into just straight up drop back passes and getting him into 3rd and long, because that's been another one of their big issues this year is efficiency on third and long. Of that 3rd and 7 plus, Goff has a 6.9 A dot, and listen, on 3rd and 7 plus, if you're throwing at 6.9 yards, you're short of the sticks. And whereas in years prior, that was popping out to like 8.5 yards per attempt, this year it's translating to like 6.3 yards per attempt. And so it's just the issue. Like you can see in the stats as well in the film where the issues start to compound on top of each other for this offense, and why you get a game like the Green Bay game where the run game falters, and then they start to move away from play action, and then they have to get into more straight drop back in his 3rd and long. And now all of a sudden Goff's under pressure. He's not able to get it out as clean, and the offense sputters at times. They still are able to put up some points, but it sputters in times when they need it most. And so like Dallas stopping the run is so critical, especially because I think like the Lions post loss is like the big thing is that they rarely lose 2. I think they've only lost 2 in a row once since Dan Campbell's been in the building. And one of the big things they like to do after a loss is they like to pound it into the ground and then get explosives off of that. And if Dallas can mitigate that explosive, the run game of getting 5 yards a carry, all of a sudden those passing game explosives start to disappear.
Yeah. I'm looking at the Lions' rest of season schedule just to get a concept of like Jared Goff's value for fantasy as well. And even just thinking about like the team and where they like their opportunity the rest of the season. You play the Cowboys, but you don't have Amon-Ra, so it just kind of like sets you back from a pass game perspective. Even if the Cowboys are a good matchup, it's just one of those things where it's like you're playing with Tommy Kennedy out there and Isaac Tesla. So we'll cover those guys too from a fantasy angle and like what they might do here in a sec. Then the Rams game. If they lose this Cowboys game, this Ram game's that then becomes the next most important game of the season because they can't lose the rest of the season if they lose. they can only afford one more loss the rest of the season,
Yeah,
essentially.
pretty much.
So then,
I was
so
just gonna
then
say
you
that.
come into
Yeah,
the situation, and oh, basically what I'm getting at is the rest of their matchups outside of this Rams game are really favorable from a fantasy perspective for the past game. So you get the Steelers, Vikings, and Bears. I know the Bears week 18, so might not matter for a lot of leagues or whatever. But pretty much every single game is indoors. These 4 games are indoors. We know we've got an indoor golf like kind of thing out there.
yeah,
And the Steelers and Vikings are definitely teams that you can pass on. The Rams are going to be tough because of the pass rush, and their defense is actually pretty solid. So I think he's going to be a matchup play for me. Like Cowboys, I mean, I'm okay if you want to throw him out there. It's just going to be you may not get the full ceiling upside just because of the weaponry. And then the Rams game might be a little bit tough, but the Steelers and Vikings, I feel like they might put up. They're going to put up a lot of points those 2 games, in my opinion.
yeah. I think so too. And I just I wonder, like, I think it, again, the Steelers are not that great against the run. The Vikings have been okay against the run. The Rams have been good against the run. I think that's kind of the angle to look at because as much as like when you see the Lions offense, when it goes, and everybody kind of eats a little bit. Either like the receivers switch up, but like Goff and the running backs, when that offense goes, they both eat consistently and they're both going to get their numbers. And so I really like, I do think like this Dallas game, I think Goff because it's indoors, because it's after a loss, it's little dumb things like that. I think that he's worth a play, but the Rams, I would sit him, and the like, yeah, Vikings and Steelers, especially the Steelers. I think that the Lions, with the how the Steelers like to run man coverage, like to go single high, that plays right into what Goff likes to do. Goff rips against single highs, so I think that like that is a really fit. That's probably one of his better matchups of the year.
Yeah. So I think that we just kind of encapsulated like what his value is rest of the season. And then for this game, we've got 2 other kind of rando spots that are going to be out there, right? Like there is a tight end on the team that's going to be playing, regardless if they're playing 11 personnel or whatever. And then we've got a typical slot receiver and another outside receiver. But I think the weaponry that we're talking about is Tommy Kennedy and Isaac Tesla.
Yep,
What
and that's about it.
we're not going to spend a lot of time with we're not going to spend a lot of time on these guys, but if people are interested for DFS purposes, like you got to pick one of those guys to do anything, whether that's just like catch 2 or 3 balls or whatever. Who's interesting to you and why?
I mean, Tommy Kennedy's interesting in the sense that I think he could be somewhat of a target hog. He's not very big. He's a slot receiver. And so I really think he has value in that being that underneath check down. Again, not nearly as much upside as Amon-Ra, but like you could very easily see him dive into like 6, 7 receptions for 50 yards. Like it's just accumulating a lot of 6, 7 yard underneath cross hitches, hitch routes, little drag routes underneath, things like that. I think that's where Tommy Kennedy kind of he thrives. They'll shoot him up the seam every once in a while as kind of a pace changer. You saw it against the Packers. When they go too high, they'll shoot him up the seam, and Goff's not afraid to rip it up the seam. But really, where most of his value comes in is off of those little dink and dunk, matriculate the ball down the field, and just keep the offense on task. I think that's where Kennedy comes into play as a very low upside, but like probably still garners 5+ catches. And then with Tesla, I think what
I have to pause you before you get into Tesla because I just wanted to one, I feel like the name is just fun and an enigma in itself, but then 2, it's funny because I feel like he has a strong value in the fantasy community to a lot of people for some reason that's beyond my I think it has to do with some of like the amazing catches. And I was listening to somebody else, maybe even 10 minutes before you and I got on the phone today, and they were saying that like their grandmother knows. And person's not from Detroit, their grandmother knows Isaac Tesla because he made like a couple of ridiculous catches this year in the preseason or something like that.
Yeah.
And so I feel like from a fantasy angle, like his name is elevated more than his actual play is. But I want your take, given that you're the resident Lions guy.
Well, it's funny. I actually remember watching Isaac Tesla in high school. He went to high school like 25 minutes away from where I grew up, and they played my old alumni when he was in high school. So I actually remember seeing him play as a quarterback for I think it was Unity Christian he went to. So that
I was hoping you were going to say that you're out there.
No, gosh, no, I'm too old for that. So I think I'm like 10 years a senior. But so like that's funny. But like he does. I think one, it's like the catches he's made are worth talking about. Two, I think it's just him being in this offense. It's like it's another weapon to plug into an explosive offense. There's no way there's no way he doesn't get output. So I think it's like the combination of those couple things that kind of boosted him. And
people saw Tim Patrick last year like do some interesting stuff. So I feel like it's like, you just step in and you could be a guy that came off of 2 major injuries and just step in there and do something. So why not Isaac Tesla?
Yeah, and so they're starting to incorporate him in a little bit more the last couple weeks, and where he's kind of operated has been kind of more as JMO's gotten more incorporated into the offense. What's kind of switched is now they have different people running the kind of clear out routes. It still is JMO a little bit, but it's not as much as he's become a little bit more of a focal point of the passing scheme. Now you start to get Tesla to stretch the field a little bit because of those contested catches and things like that. You have to respect and stick to him. But then this is just a short clip, but like where his value comes in is these like deep crossers, things like that, trying to get him into holes in the defense, allowing him to work two-man route concepts, 2-man deep route concepts off of play action. Because you don't have Khalif Raymond there, because you don't have Amon-Ra there, he's probably the next biggest threat, especially even over Kennedy, in my opinion. And so like his target volume, I don't think will be there. I think he sees max 4 targets, but they'll be higher value targets in the sense that like they'll be more downfield. He will get looks in the red zone because I think like that is really where his value is, his ability to make contested catches and Goff not being afraid to throw it up to him in the red zone. And so I think like he's kind of the big ceiling, very low floor play. Whereas Tommy Kennedy is the like moderate floor with not a lot of ceiling.
Yeah, Tommy Kennedy's not going out there and getting like 115 yards or something. Like he's probably going to get 50 max, and it's just going to be a lot of underneath receptions. Probably, he's not as good. He's not an Amon-Ra St. Brown when it comes to yak. So, and if he was, then he would be Amon-Ra St. Brown maybe, but he's not like that when it comes to yak. So we're just talking about a high floor play. But in these DFS tournaments, sometimes you just want guys that are going to get a couple receptions so that you can get some points. So
you want a guy that's
he's not a bad low salary option.
Yeah, he's a guy that you can not rely. Rely is a big word to put onto Tom Kennedy, but he's a guy that I think that you can look to for just kind of eating up a couple points. Like I said, I think that you're looking at 10, 12 points, which has value, but it's, you're not, the odds that you see him go for like 15 plus, you're going to have to get a touchdown in there, and it'd be stunning if he had enough targets and yards to do that.
10 to 12 people got their ears perked up for like a minimum salary Tommy Kennedy. So
because
that's not
it is going to be low.
The thing is like we've seen some big deep plays against the Cowboys defense. Xavier Worthy just had one last game where it's like this guy's just available and he's wide open. And if you're looking for that, like that guy's going to be Tesla, but it could also just not be available this game for some reason. And
Right.
or Jared Goff decides not to throw it deep because that's something that he likes to do.
Right.
And
And if
so,
like if the pressure is there and he can't push the ball down the field, Tesla just becomes a track star.
exactly. We'll take a quick break, but when we get back, we're going to talk a little bit about the Lions defense and cover kind of how they're going to look in this matchup against the Cowboys specifically, maybe some Cowboys talk for like 2 seconds about who may pop because of what the Lions defense does. But we'll get into all of that and maybe even some future season outlooks. Also talk about props when we come back for this game specifically. But yeah, we'll be back soon. All right, we're back. And we kind of did like the intermission show within the show where we kind of talked about everything that we were going to talk about just because I naturally ask you a lot of questions and you naturally ask me a lot of questions and then we get off topic. But we're back and what we wanted to talk about was the Lions defense and then just specific to like this matchup and what this might mean from a fantasy angle and what you may see from the Cowboys offense. Man, we've seen the Lions kind of get torched lately on defense when it comes to like deep balls, things over the middle, etc. So I'm just curious, like, what are the angles in this matchup from your perspective? You kind of told me before the show this is a good matchup for George Pickens. I want to hear more about it.
Yeah, I mean, both Pickens and Lamb, the Lions run a ton of man coverage. They run a ton of single eye. They're at like 48% man coverage since week 8. They're at about 68% single high since week 8. And that's been pretty consistent. That's actually like a bump from what they were like over the season before that. I think they were like at 43% man coverage. But they love to get all that to say they love to go man coverage and they just want one-on-one matchups. They trust the backfield. And where the issue has come in against New York and against Green Bay is that they're not getting the pressure up front to go along with man coverage. I mean, if you're going to run a ton of man coverage, you're banking on pressure. You're banking on the defense not having to guard that long. And what Jordan Love had, and I'll just show like a couple of, and this is where Dak can thrive too, is that the Lions coverage on Thursday was pretty good. They were pretty sticky and the corners are solid, but there's no pressure. And as you can see, Jordan Love play like he's got a clean pocket, he's got a ton of room to step up, and as tightly covered as Watson is, he's got inside leverage. He's a big bodied receiver. He's in front of the corner. And Jordan Love can set his feet and just rip it in there. And that's what Dak does too. Dak is kind of similar in that way, in that like if he can get into his drop, if he can have a clean pocket, if he can step up into the throw, he'll rip it into any space to a fault sometimes, but that's what he'll do. And that's been an issue that's cropped up for the Lions. I think this is the same play. Whoops. It's just an issue that's propped up for the Lions is that in games where they're getting pressure, which was earlier in the season, the secondary was waning and the secondary coverage wasn't great. Now there's been a flip into now they're not creating pressure, and despite having good coverage, like again, this is pretty good coverage across the board. Dubs has a step, but the corner's closing. But it doesn't matter because Jordan Love has all the time in the world back there to step up, throw, deliver it where his receiver needs it. And the corner can be as tight as he wants. He'd have to be in Romeo Dubs' kitchen to be able to make a play on that ball because it's perfectly placed because Jordan Love has a ton of time to throw. And so that's where I think that George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb can have a really, really good game against this Lions defense. Both Pickens,
the slant boys.
the slant boys. It's what they do best. They separate really well. They crush man coverage. I think that since CeeDee Lamb has come back, George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb have commanded 61% of the target share against man coverage, which is crazy, but it's deserved because those dudes just win. And I'll be very interested to see if the Lions do continue to lean into their heavy man coverage, because this matchup, if they do go that way, I don't know. I still don't know what I think the outcome of the game is, but if they go heavy man coverage, I know that I'm looking at Pickens and CeeDee Lamb to go over 100 yards. That's just the
Yeah.
crux of it because you just they're both. We talked about it last week. I think they're both top 10 receivers. I think George Pickens has vaulted himself into a top 5. I think they're the best. I think they're the best receiving duo in the NFL, if you ask me right now. And so, like, man coverage just plays into how they want to win. They want to have one-on-one matchups. They want to be able to work their moves against a guy consistently throughout the game. And eventually those reps start adding up and they do win more often than not. They will, against man coverage, I think they both have a 30-40% win rate. And that's enough to get you over 100 yards, especially when you have a defense that loves to get into base defense, which is your 4 defensive backs, 3 linebackers, 4 down linemen. And that inherently, the Lions linebackers do play really well, but it can create holes in those seams and just inside the numbers, in between the numbers and the hash. It can kind of create those holes, and that's where those slant boys love to go.
That's exactly what I was thinking, was like when you have those linebackers out there, you're just creating more space for slants to happen.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting because
just that like right between the numbers and the hash, like you're just attacking that right there.
Yeah,
and I agree with you. We don't have to like rehash everything from last pod. If you really want to know like what we think about George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb, like go back to that one.
Yeah,
episode 2 of our entire podcast for the Cutup. We think that they're incredible. But the one question I have for you is, if they don't go man coverage, what are they running? Is it still a single high situation, cover 3, or what else would they be doing?
They actually they'll get into a little bit more too high. They incorporate cover 4, which again kind of gets into man coverage. It's man coverage from zone essentially, but I just want to pull up their matrix just so I get it correct here, but they will lean into, hold on, here we go. So they do a ton of cover 1, and then they like to mix in cover 4 and cover 2 at about 15%, but it is really cover 1, cover 3. They're at cover 1 33% of the time. They're at cover 3 27% of the time. So it really is mainly cover 1. Or no, sorry, it really is mainly single eye. It's, like I said, over 60% single eye. And then their cover 4 ends up usually being a cover 4 match anyway. So that ends up playing like man. And then they like to get it, they like to blitz a decent amount. So they'll get into cover 0 every once in a while. But really it's cover 1. It's man coverage, it's single eye. They trust their guys to win one-on-one matchups, and they're banking on the defensive line getting pressure. And like that, you saw it with Aaron Glenn. You're seeing it with Calvin Shepard, that they'll go down with that. They believe that their guys will win. And so as much as
for better or for worse, right?
Yeah. And as much as you'd love to see them not go man to man, that's just who they are. And so I think that they'll throw some wrinkles in with how they drop out linebackers. They'll throw some wrinkles in with how they drop out defensive linemen here and there with mixing up sim pressures and things like that. But for the most part, they want to go man up. We think we can beat you, hat on a hat.
Yeah. So this just sets up for a great matchup for both Pickens and CeeDee Lamb. And I personally think this will be the bigger Pickens game than CeeDee Lamb, but only because I think that there might be more opportunity downfield if they are truly doing the man coverage situation that we've seen CeeDee Lamb also win deep a couple times recently.
Yeah.
Last game, he had a 50-yard catch or 40-yard catch. And 2 games ago against the Eagles, he had another one. So, but I'm kind of banking on potentially having Pickens be the one that maybe leads in receiving yards, even though it's both of them potentially going over 100 yards.
Yeah.
The only other thing that we need to cover from a pass game perspective then is Jake Ferguson, guys that people are interested in at least. And I think we were talking about it a little bit offline, like not the greatest matchup situation for Jake Ferguson. If he's getting manned up, he will probably get manned up from either the linebackers, Campbell, Anzalone, or Branch. And I don't necessarily like him in any of those situations. We talked about him last time against cover two. He's really good at the seams. The seams aren't really as open against this line's defense. So you're mainly thinking it's check down options. But even then, if it's man coverage, like these guys are going to be on him. He's going to have to just box out to get a couple catches. I'm not
Yeah,
really that into him.
yeah, like this reverts into because I feel like Jake Ferguson kind of has a two path of what he is for different games, and it's based on what the defense plays. If it's a more two eye heavy team, you see him kind of push the seams, push inside the numbers, hitch routes up the seam, things like that. Whereas if they go more single high, you kind of start to see him become more of a check down, more of a just get it out. He runs a little leak route, he runs a little arrow route to the flat, and then he's there as a second option for Prescott. I think that this game goes that way, where if he is pushing up vertical, like you said, he's getting he's getting Branch, who's a good cover safety. Anzalone's a good cover linebacker. Jack Campbell's a good cover linebacker. And the Lions have played well against tight ends overall this year. So I don't see a ton of value in him this game. I think that if anything, you're seeing a lot more of he could go 5 catches for 24 yards kind of thing, where there's not really any potential for explosive. It's just to get the ball past the line of scrimmage and he gains 3-4 yards and gets out of bounds like that. That's where I see his usage in this game as opposed to last week where I kind of thought it was going to be more up the seams and vertical.
Yeah. So we covered the pass game. What about the run game? What are you seeing from the Lions defense? Do you think that Javonte has any shot at creating any lanes or big runs or anything like that? Or is this mainly going to be, bottled up for most of the game?
The Lions' run defense has been really good. I think this is not a big upside game for him. I don't know what his line is at, but this season, the Lions have given up 1.9% explosive run rate on the ground, and they're giving up about 4.66 yards per carry, but it's 48% success rate. So the yards per carry number might look a little bit better, but overall, they've been really good against the run game. Zone concepts, they're giving up 3.5 yards a carry. So I think I really think that if Dallas wins this game, it's going to have to be through the arm of Dak Prescott, and it's going to be them working a little bit, working Pickens and Lamb down the field. I don't think Javonte Williams has the juice to break explosives on this team. I think he can nickel and dime. I think he could see a potential for a game like what the Packers had last week where Josh Jacobs just kind of hammers 5 yards a carry. But still, I think his ceiling is somewhat mitigated just by the sheer nature of that. The Lions end up usually getting theirs against the run game more often than not, in the sense that they're good at plugging it up and they just don't give up a ton of yards week over week.
Yeah, I mean, they have in my opinion, a pretty elite linebacker core. So I'm kind of scared for Javonte in this game. That doesn't mean you sit him in fantasy. It's kind of one of those situations where it's this guy can score a bunch of touchdowns. The Cowboys have an explosive offense.
Yeah,
they could put up 30 points this game. I think they probably will. And so from my perspective, it's all right, do you get a goal line carry or 2 or even 3?
right.
And that's how fantasy works. I mean, it's just built off of scoring touchdowns most of the time anyway. So the opportunity's there. He gets over 70% of their work. I'm 0% worried about Malik Davis, though I do think he's a great handcuff if you're in redraft fantasy leagues to pick up and just want some upside.
If anything, Malik Davis is the guy that'll break a big run, kind of like how he did against the Chiefs, having a pace changer like that. that's the guy that could break a run. And I misspoke. The Lions are actually giving up 3.89 yards per carry on the ground this year. So better than what I had said. I was looking at their numbers to the left side, but still, like, yeah, I mean, the Lions want to stop the run game because then they want to be able to get you into pass situations. They want to be able to play man on man, and they want to get pressure. The issue is like I
Yep.
said, they haven't been getting pressure. So the whole stopping the running, then making them pass has been better for offenses than not. So that
Yeah.
getting pressure on Dak is gonna be the game changer, and Cowboys have done well with keeping Dak clean this year.
Yep. I see it kind of similar to you. So transitioning from the defense and then actually just getting into some of our best like prop picks for this week, I think we kind of set the stage a little bit. I'm also going to give one that's not a prop pick. I have 1,000 bets in my head for this game already. So why don't I start it off? I just given the Lions injuries on offense, I saw the injury report today. There's potential to miss some offensive linemen. This team doesn't have the luxury of losing more offensive linemen. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown, unlikely to play, in my opinion, just given the two DNTs plus the fact that he said he's unsure if he's going to play. And he seems like a guy that would be like, yeah, I'm playing if he had any shot.
Yeah.
I just think that the offense in general is, I mean, it's really leaning on two guys in Jamo and Gibbs to do like big plays. And I feel like when you limit your options that much, it's going to be tough sledding. Not that the Lions won't put up like 2-3 touchdowns, but I just think that I personally think the Cowboys are going to win the game, and I'm pessimistic about my home team usually. So I actually took them money line earlier today, or sorry, 2 days ago, when I saw it at 3.5. The line was at 3.5, and I was like, I'm taking the Cowboys money line. So that's one of my picks. We'll do props as well. Steve, what do you have a prop that you were interested in for this game?
I mean, I definitely like Pickens at 78.5 yards. I mean, like I said, I think that he's at 79.5 right now on FanDuel. I like that line. Heck, I like CeeDee at 80.5 right now. I also like Tom Kennedy at 3.5 receptions. Like I said, I think he's a guy that that Goff can rely on underneath. He's a guy that they trust in the short area to hang out of the ball, catch it cleanly, and do his job, and not more beyond that. So I like Tom Kennedy at 3.5 yards. And
Not to
then
mention, in our last episode, we like talked about how the Cowboys give up a lot of like free underneath plays, basically, and that's
yeah,
the role he's going to play. And
yeah.
that I think that'll still just be pretty open. And it actually leads into one of my future bets, but I'm going to let you keep going. So I want everyone to remember that concept.
The last one that I like is actually just as a fun one is I like Isaac Tesla longest reception 60.5 yards. I think that if he gets targeted, it's gonna be down the field. He's not a guy that you're relying on to win 10-yard hitches, things like that. If he's getting targeted, it's gonna be a deep crosser. It's going to be a in route. It's gonna be a contested catch, throw it up to him and give him a chance. So I think again with how hampered this defense is, or how hampered this offense is with injuries, I think Tesla gets a couple shots downfield. So I actually do let. I think that 16.5 number is pretty good because I could see him having one catch for 23 yards and that being his day. But I think that
Oh
if he
yeah,
does get targeted, it is more downfield, and so like that number stands out to me.
yeah, and we've seen the Cowboys give up plenty of big plays this season, and it I mean, I think the secondary's gotten a little bit better, but the linebacker core, from a pass game perspective, is still letting up a lot of plays over the middle of the field. If he runs like a deep crosser dig or something like that, he can get 17, 18, 20 yards pretty easily.
Yeah,
So we talked about the flats kind of being open, the underneath routes, and it just kind of gave me the thought about Jahmyr Gibbs. And I
yeah,
think they're going to have to lean in heavy to Jahmyr Gibbs this game in both the run and pass game. But I think that they have to be even more sensitive to him in the pass game. I'm seeing a line on FanDuel of his receiving yards at 33.5. And I think the over for that one. He just has to do more stuff for them.
What do you
And we
what do you
talked
think?
about
What do you think of
what?
his rushing plus receiving yards 115.5? What do you think about that line? Just curious.
See, I want to lean into the pass game stuff
Yeah.
because I still think there's a lot of holes for the Cowboys in the pass game, especially if you're saying like, hey, he's gonna be going with like some of our linebackers. Um, I think there's holes there. I'm a little bit. I actually do somewhat think that the Cowboys' run defense is for real, so I'm a little bit scared of where that might go.
Yeah.
So I'm more so just leaning into the receiving side on this one. Then I have another one that I was looking at. I mean, I already did the long shot Dak Prescott MVP bet. That's not a prop bet for this game, but I did that after the Eagles lost at 50-1, and now it's at 16-1. So that was a
All
fun
right.
one. But let's see. I had Javonte Williams was another fun one for me. We talked about how there's a stifling run game by the Lions, and they're just going to force the Cowboys to pass in order to beat them, which they're going to be able to do probably. But I'm seeing DraftKings at 68.5 for his rushing yard line. I'm going to call the under for that one. I don't think he'll be very efficient on the ground this game. Most likely, the Cowboys will be missing Tyler Guyton, their left tackle. So that's just another injury issue for the Cowboys. Did I already throw out the Jake Ferguson one? We
No,
talked
you
about
haven't
Jake
yet.
Ferguson. Yeah, so we talked about Jake Ferguson being less of a deeper option for the Cowboys this game. I mean, he could do like 4 or 5 receptions, which would I'd be surprised if he got 5 receptions, but I mean, they could give him the ball that much, but I think it's going to be mainly underneath stuff and nothing in the seams. So I'm starting to lean towards an under on his receiving yards. It's kind of up in the air. There's different betting lines. So like Prize Picks has 40.5, ESPN has 39.5, DraftKings is 39.5, Fanatics is at 40.5. So I mean, if you can get the 40.5 somewhere, I would definitely take the under on that, but I'm even okay with the 39.5 under. He had 36 last game and we thought he was going to do well. I just see this as a CeeDee and Pickens just going crazy game. And so, yeah, I feel pretty comfortable going under for Jake Ferguson.
Yeah, just to give you an idea, to inline targets this season, the Lions have given up 5.4 yards an attempt and have allowed just a 63% completion percentage. And they only have 30
Yeah.
targets to inline targets. So all of that to say, I think that Ferguson going under is a good call.
Yeah. All right. We did our prop picks. We talked about the entire team. We have some fantasy takes that we came out of it with, some season long outlooks. What are some things that the Lions may do? I said that I think the Cowboys are going to win. You're still unsure, but
I mean,
largely we covered.
I'm gonna plant my flag and I'm gonna say the Lions are gonna win. I
Oh,
this
you're
is a
yeah,
this is just a trust. It's a trust the process pick of you trust in the team's fortitude, and you trust in the guy in the Dan Campbell ability to not lose two in a row. And that's
yeah.
I'm resting my laurels on pure unmeasurable intangibles.
And I think Dan Campbell would love that about you. So I really hope that you get a chance to chat with him at some point. But if there's nothing else, again, we're starting to get more people subscribing. We're getting more people that are interested in our content. It's been great to produce this and make this all happen. If you guys have any feedback, anything that you want to hear us talk about in future pods, I mean, you guys know which teams we're going to cover because we're always covering a team from the Thursday night football game. Send us some storylines, send us feedback on how the content is going. We're open to anything.
Yeah.
So we're
If there's concepts you noticed, if there's anything, like I think we have Rams Seahawks coming up in I think next week or a couple weeks. So like if there's something interesting there that you see, like shoot us a DM, put a comment on the video. Like we are willing
yeah,
and excited to go into anything. We love talking about this.
yeah. Um, So outside of that, follow us. You can find us on Twitter at Dhanani Zain, at Call Me Steve07. But if you don't have anything else, Steve, we can sign off.
Not just the whole likes, comments, subscribe, do all the things that help push us to more people.
Appreciate it, guys.